Back when riding skill actually meant something, legends didn't explain themselves. Ghost Rider came from that era. For years, he rode alone, let the riding do the talking, and disappeared without warning. Then, in 2022, he came back, and for the first time, he wasn't alone. The footage shows discipline, trust, and timing you don't develop overnight. Watch this all the way through, because this isn't about rumors or hype. It's about reading the riding, the choices, and the signals only long-time riders notice. By the end, you'll understand why so many experienced riders believe this wasn't just a comeback, it was a handoff. The weight of a legacy that never really died. Ghost Rider was never just a stunt rider or a faceless figure on a powerful bike. For many riders who lived through the era when the roads still felt wild and the rules felt looser, he represented something deeper. His presence carried the kind of authority only earned through absolute control and calm, under pressure. Long before social media turned every passing thrill into a performance, he built his name the slow way, through skill that could not be faked and nerve that could not be taught. Riders who remember those early years do not talk about him like a celebrity. They talk about him the way craftsmen talk about a tool built so well that it outlived the man who forged it. His name traveled quietly, passed across garages, long rides, and late-night conversations. Even in the years when he stepped away, the legacy never softened. People replayed the old footage the way some riders replay old stories from their youth. Half to relive the feeling, and half to remind themselves that mastery once looked different. It reminded many older riders of a time when the road demanded respect and rewarded fearlessness. The man behind the helmet never needed to explain himself. The riding spoke louder than any interview ever could. That silence built the myth, and the myth lasted. Yet, silence has a way of breaking when the road calls a legend back into the light. The comeback that hit like a shot of adrenaline. When Patrick resurfaced in the year 2022, it felt less like a return and more like a reminder that some riders never truly hang up their gear. A full decade had passed since his last known appearance, and many believed age, family, or simple caution had finally pulled him off the map. But then the new footage appeared, unmistakable in style and tone. The same black machine, the same steady posture, the same calm threading through traffic that once set him apart from everyone else. Older riders watched the comeback clip and recognized something familiar in an instant. Time had passed, but the core looked unchanged. For riders who spent their younger years studying his movements like a blueprint for control, this comeback meant more than nostalgia. It meant the standard still existed. It meant skill had not been diluted by trends or drowned out by online noise. It meant that the legend carried enough truth to outlast the years when everything around it shifted. Many who saw the new footage described the same feeling, a jolt of energy. The kind they had not felt in years. The kind that comes when an old story gains a new chapter. But the comeback was only the first ripple. The second came from a direction no one expected. Before we dig deeper, make sure you like this video and subscribe if you want the full truth behind the Ghost Rider universe. Add your thoughts as we go, because the next moments reveal details fans have been trying to piece together for years. The strange little video that sparked global curiosity. Not long after Patrick's return, a short clip surfaced that did not match anything from his past catalog. It showed a small, low machine tearing through city streets with surprising authority. A go-kart, stripped down, blacked out, and driven with a sense of certainty that caught viewers off guard. Patrick was the one filming, following at a steady pace, never pushing, almost as if he wanted the unknown driver to set the tone. The helmet on the small machine was dark, the visor impossible to read, giving nothing away about the person underneath. The footage was raw, quiet, unpolished, and strangely intimate. What made this moment grip the community was not speed or risk. It was the energy between the machines. Something about the clip felt intentional, like an introduction rather than a stunt. Viewers around the world watched it repeatedly, trying to understand why Patrick would film someone else with that level of focus. Seasoned riders noticed the smoothness of the driver's lines, the confidence in tight spaces, and the lack of hesitation that usually betrays inexperience. It was not proof of anything, not a declaration, and not a reveal. It was simply a moment that carried weight, for reasons no one could name yet. And then came the second piece of footage, turning speculation into certainty that something larger was taking shape. Before we go further, take a second to check the gear I use. It's all in the description. Now let's get back to the reveal nobody thought would ever happen. The moment it became clear. This was no one-off. The next video removed any doubt that the earlier clip had been a fluke. Patrick released new footage that showed the same dark figure, the same confident movements, but now placed directly beside him. The title hinted at partnership, not mentorship, and the tone felt far more deliberate. This was no accident, no experiment, and no spontaneous recording. It was the beginning of something that carried structure and intention. Older riders watching could sense it immediately. When two machines move with that level of silent understanding, it suggests planning, trust, and expectation. What made this moment significant was not the riding itself, but the message beneath it. The footage felt like an introduction to a new presence, entering a legendary space, not as a replacement, but as an addition. Viewers who had followed Ghost Rider for years understood the importance of that shift. Legends rarely share the road unless there is a reason. The formation, the angles, and the pacing spoke without words, telling viewers that a new chapter had begun. This was no longer about a comeback. It was about expansion. And with that expansion came questions no one could yet answer, shaping the path for everything that followed. The airfield, run that proved absolute control. The airfield was quiet that morning, the kind of quiet that makes sound travel farther than expected. The straight stretch of pavement looked long enough for most riders to feel uneasy past a certain point, yet it held a different purpose that day. Junior eased the Hayabusa forward, with the sort of patience that separates seasoned riders from reckless ones. There was no showmanship, no theatrics, just smooth throttle input and a careful feel of the machine beneath him. When he opened the bike up, it was not a sudden burst, but a controlled climb, the way a rider tests everything from track temperature to wind behavior, before trusting the full range of the engine. Observers close enough to witness the run noticed how little correction he made once speed began building. Every rider knows how a fast bike can reveal weaknesses in form, balance, or reaction. Yet Junior rode with a kind of stillness that suggested complete understanding, as though the bike's movement and his own intentions were aligned. By the time the machine reached its upper limit, the run did not look chaotic or wild. It looked planned. Riders who later watched the footage recognized a truth familiar to anyone who has pushed a machine hard. Precision is not loud. It is quiet, steady, and unmistakable. This was the kind of control that cannot be faked. And if the airfield run showed discipline, the next challenge would reveal something far more demanding. The Nurburgring drive that shut. Critics up fast. The Nurburgring has humbled professionals for generations. The track's narrow lanes, blind crests, and shifting surfaces have a way of stripping confidence from even gifted drivers. When Junior took a tuned machine onto that circuit, he did so without promotion or build-up. The run began the same way any serious test begins, with calm entry and measured pace, letting the machine settle into the rhythm of the asphalt. What stood out almost immediately was his refusal to let adrenaline override judgment. The Nurburgring punishes impulse, yet Junior treated every corner as though he had studied it for years. Throughout the lap, the car stayed planted in a way that told viewers he was not fighting it. Skilled drivers know the difference between forcing a machine through a corner and guiding it with minimal correction. Junior chose the latter. His braking zones were deliberate rather than aggressive. His acceleration was smooth enough that the car never strained for traction. Even in demanding sections where overconfidence creates danger, his approach stayed consistent. The time he set on that run did more than draw attention, it silenced skepticism. Riders and drivers who had dismissed him as a novelty quickly realized they were watching someone who understood mechanical limits and respected them. Nothing about the lap suggested chance. It suggested knowledge. But while a controlled lap on a legendary track proves discipline, real pressure comes when the situation offers no preparation at all. The roadblock escape that defied expectation. The roadblock incident unfolded in seconds, yet those seconds revealed something no airfield or racetrack could. Junior approached the intersection at a pace that allowed no room for hesitation. 2 patrol cars formed a complete barrier, leaving a gap that looked too narrow for comfort. Most riders would have braked, searched for an escape route, or accepted that the situation had turned against them. Junior did none of those things. Instead, he adjusted his line with a subtle shift, the kind of micro-movement that only comes from instinct sharpened through hours of practice. The bike threaded the gap with inches to spare, never wobbling, never drifting, never overreacting. Observers later slowed the footage, frame by frame. But the truth was clear, even at full speed. He chose the only path available, but he did not gamble. He calculated. Experienced riders recognize this difference immediately. A gamble relies on luck. A calculation relies on technique. His posture stayed balanced, his throttle remained steady, and his exit line carried him forward without the slightest panic. Even those who disapprove of riding anywhere near law enforcement barriers admitted the execution was precise. It was the kind of split-second decision that reveals a rider's real nature, the part that does not surface in controlled environments. And while these events showed specific moments of skill, there is a broader picture that seasoned riders understand instinctively. What an experienced rider can read in Junior's technique. When riders talk about technique, they often focus on speed, but real evaluation comes from details hidden between movements. Junior's riding shows an understanding of line selection that avoids wasted motion. He stays wide only when the corner requires it, cuts inside only when the road allows it, and never exaggerates his position for dramatic effect. This restraint tells experienced riders that he is not performing for an audience. He is simply maximizing efficiency. His throttle discipline reveals a similar pattern. Instead of abrupt bursts, he uses steady input, letting the engine work without forcing it. This creates stability, and stability creates speed. Another trait that stands out is how he reads the environment. Instead of reacting to obstacles, he anticipates them. Riders who have spent years navigating unpredictable roads know that anticipation is the real foundation of safety. It reduces panic and keeps the machine balanced. Junior's braking reflects the same principle. He applies pressure early enough to maintain control, yet late enough to preserve momentum. This balance separates practiced riders from those who rely on reflex alone. Everything in his technique suggests intention. No wasted corrections, no unnecessary movements, no hesitation where confidence is required. These traits do not point to who he is, they point to how he rides. And how he rides tells a deeper story than any single moment ever could. And it is that deeper story, built entirely on technique, that prepares the path for the questions waiting in the next one. How riders became detectives the moment Junior appeared. When Junior first appeared on camera, the reaction across the riding world was not passive curiosity. It was instant investigation. Riders who had spent decades studying posture, gear, and subtle habits moved straight into analysis mode. Online forums lit up with frame-by-frame breakdowns, each thread filled with theories offered by people who had developed sharp eyes from years spent on the road. Someone posted still images comparing body structure. Someone else created a slow-motion edit to examine movements more closely. Within days, entire communities formed around one simple question: who was this silent figure moving beside Ghost Rider? Social media platforms saw the same pattern unfold. Videos spread quickly, collecting comments from veteran riders who approached the mystery with a mixture of fascination and discipline. They discussed boot shape, glove wear, and even the angle at which Junior carried his shoulders. None of these details revealed anything on their own. Yet riders continued digging, because the tone of the early footage hinted at intention. This was not a random rider passing through the frame. This was someone being introduced deliberately. What made this early investigation unique was the level of calm persistence displayed by the community. Instead of wild speculation, most looked for consistent patterns, waiting for something concrete before forming conclusions. It was detective work shaped by experience, not excitement. And soon enough, pieces began surfacing that pointed in a direction too specific to ignore. If you want to stay ahead of every new reveal, subscribe now. The story behind Ghost Rider and the rise of his successor is evolving fast, and the next update could drop without warning. Keep your eyes open and stay connected. The circumstantial trail that points in one direction. As more footage appeared, a path of clues began forming, not through direct statements, but through small details scattered across different platforms. One of the first markers came from a birthday post shared years earlier, showing a family connection and a timeline that aligned perfectly with Junior's first appearance. Nothing about the post was unusual at the time, yet once viewers revisited it, the dates created a foundation for further investigation. The age listed in that post matched the approximate build and presence of the person riding beside Patrick. Another clue surfaced from a photograph taken at the Nurburgring long before Junior appeared publicly. The image showed Patrick with a younger rider preparing for a track session, and although no names were highlighted, riders who had followed the story recognized the significance. The timing fit neatly into the emerging narrative. This was not proof, but it was the kind of circumstantial detail that experienced observers weigh heavily when examining a pattern. A person who appears near a legend at key moments is rarely there by accident. Additional discussions referenced sightings at local events where Patrick had been known to ride or test machinery. Each mention added another link to the chain. Every piece was subtle, but none contradicted the others. The circumstantial trail began forming a picture that felt too aligned to dismiss, even if nothing about it was confirmed outright. But while clues can map a timeline, the most convincing signs often appear not in public posts, but in the quiet language shared between two riders. The unspoken signals only long-time riders could recognize. Riders who have spent years on open roads develop a second sense for interpreting movement, the kind that allows them to gauge another rider's intentions long before signals appear. When viewers watched footage of Patrick and Junior together, many noticed something familiar: the flow of coordination that only emerges between riders who have ridden side by side for a long time. The spacing remained consistent, neither too cautious nor too loose. The timing of shifts matched without communication. The entire formation displayed a rhythm that suggested shared experience rather than spontaneous cooperation. These small details caught the attention of riders who understood how deeply instinct shapes group riding. They pointed out the way Junior adjusted position in anticipation of changes that Patrick had not yet committed to visually. That type of reaction is not imitation. It is recognition. Similarly, the lack of verbal cues indicated an understanding rooted in repetition. Riders who know each other well can communicate through subtle changes in line, body weight, or speed, and that communication becomes nearly invisible to everyone else. Longtime observers argued that this invisible dialogue revealed more than any external clue ever could. It suggested a connection that goes beyond mere practice or opportunity. It spoke to familiarity built over time and trust earned through countless shared miles. Whether the public had proof or not, the silent coordination between the two riders offered a strong suggestion. And while movement revealed its own story, Patrick's choice to remain silent offered an equally powerful message. The deliberate silence that speaks louder than any reveal. Throughout the growing speculation, Patrick chose not to clarify or deny anything surrounding Junior's identity. His restraint was noticeable. When he addressed the mystery publicly, he did so with brief comments that provided no answers. Instead of stating names or explaining the partnership, he relied on a tone that suggested the silence was intentional. Legends often guard their stories carefully, not out of secrecy for secrecy's sake, but because some narratives gain strength when left unspoken. Riders familiar with the culture recognized the approach immediately. In high-stakes riding, silence protects those involved, avoids unwanted attention, and preserves the craft's purity. It lets the mystery stand without forced explanations. That deliberate distance shaped the investigation more than any clue viewers uncovered. It kept everyone guessing throughout constantly. His silence did not confirm anything, yet it did not dismiss anything either. It created a boundary that signaled respect for the figure riding beside him. It told the community that any answers they sought would have to come from observation, not from spoken statements. Whether riders agreed with this choice or not, the message beneath it was consistent. Some truths are meant to be felt, not declared. And with that deliberate silence, the investigation reached a point where speculation gave way to meaning, setting the stage for what comes next. Why anonymity has become part of the myth itself. In a world where every moment seems designed for exposure, the image of a faceless rider carries a strange and powerful weight. Anonymity has grown rare, replaced by constant visibility and endless attempts to stand out. Against that backdrop, the idea of a rider who refuses to show his face or speak publicly feels almost rebellious. It pushes against the modern expectation that identity must be front and center. By choosing silence and refusing recognition, the figure known as Junior restores something older riders remember: the belief that skill speaks for itself. The mystery does not obscure the story, it enhances it. The culture surrounding motorcycles has always valued independence, and anonymity fits naturally into that tradition. Long before social platforms existed, riders judged one another by discipline, not by name. The faceless nature of this new presence brings that standard back into view. It reminds people that the road does not care who you are, only how you ride. It also allows the viewer to project their own understanding onto the figure, keeping the myth open rather than confined to a single face or personality. This freedom is rare today, and it is part of why the story resonates so deeply. But anonymity is only one layer. The reaction from riders around the world shows how far the influence has already spread. How riders across the world reacted to the new Ghost Rider era. The arrival of a new figure riding beside a legendary presence sparked different reactions depending on who was watching. Veteran riders tended to view the development with a sense of calm appreciation. Many have spent decades watching styles rise and fall, and they recognized the significance of seeing someone new step into the frame without fanfare. They valued the discipline, the restraint, and the absence of self-promotion. Younger viewers often reacted with more intensity, drawn in by the mystery and the visual style. For them, the appeal lay in the secrecy, the coordination, and the sense that something rare was unfolding in front of them. Across countries, reactions carried distinct character. European riders focused on technique, while North American riders valued defiance and anonymity. Others saw symbolic resistance. All agreed Junior's arrival marked a real shift, not a stunt. Even those far removed from the original era joined in, discussing respect, mentorship, and evolution. Conversations moved from gear to culture, showing the story had grown beyond one region or generation and taken on a global meaning. And within these conversations, a deeper question began forming about the future of the Ghost Rider name itself. What a multi-generational Ghost Rider legacy could mean for the future of riding. When people thought of Ghost Rider in earlier years, they often imagined a singular figure. But the appearance of a second rider introduced the possibility of continuity, something rare in a culture built on individual skill. A multi-generational legacy shifts the meaning of the story entirely. It suggests that the name is no longer tied to one person, but to a philosophy, a method, and a standard. This changes how riders interpret the legend. It becomes less about who wore the helmet first, and more about what the role represents. For the culture, this idea carries weight. Riders know knowledge must be passed on with discipline and commitment. Seeing this, Dynamic publicly shows how traditions endure, turning a single legend into an evolving story. Expectations shift from wondering about retirement to imagining new directions. A second figure invites interpretation, whether mentorship or succession, reinforcing that true mastery never ends with one rider, but continues through those willing to accept the responsibility. And at the center of that continuation stands a symbol that speaks louder than any identity or reveal ever could. The symbol at the center of the story. As the narrative expands, Junior becomes more than a person. He becomes a symbol that riders interpret in their own way. To some, he represents discipline, the kind that grows only through quiet repetition. To others, he represents courage, the willingness to ride with precision when every mistake carries weight. And to many, he embodies continuity, the bridge between past and future, that keeps a tradition alive without diluting what made it powerful in the first place. The symbol holds strength precisely because it remains undefined. It leaves room for riders to connect through their own experiences. Junior's presence shifts the focus from identity to meaning. The helmet, silence, and coordination signal commitment to the craft, urging riders to reflect on why they ride and the value of earned mastery. As the journey continues, the figure beside Ghost Rider becomes a reminder that skill endures, discipline matters, and traditions survive when carried with humility. A reveal changes nothing. The riding itself shows that legends grow strongest when the story stays grounded and the myth continues forward. That's the full picture as it stands. No hype, just what the riding shows. Now I want to hear from riders who've logged real miles. Do you see this as mentorship, succession, or just two skilled riders sharing the road? Drop your take in the comments. If this kind of honest breakdown matters to you, give it a like and subscribe. We'll keep telling these stories the right way.